Hello, just want to double check that everyone can hear me.
Sure can.
Excellent news. Okay.
I can, but Chris can't.
Can you hear me, Chris? He's on mute.
Yes.
I can now.
Yes, I can hear you. Excellent news. Wondering if I should swap over to the camera on my screen. Oh, maybe not. See how we track. Oh, water. Everyone's starting to come in. Give everyone a chance. Get started in 1 more minute. What I might do is just mute participants for now. Okay. How about we get ourselves underway? Oh, good. Everyone's starting to come in. And we'll get started. Welcome everyone to the Microsoft 365 Adoption User Group for May. Your hosts today are Kirsty McGrath, so that would be myself, and we've also got Chris, who's in Brisbane. Hey, Chris, holding up now the fort at our Brisbane location at the library. So we got our first attendee in Brisbane, which is all very exciting. Come on, welcome on in. So, yes, that's it. Come in. So, getting ourselves started. The presentation is available for you online. The recordings are available, and there's lots of other information for you for this particular session. It's very quiet here. Now it starts the music. So it is a recorded session. We are going to stay on mute. I've just muted everyone throughout the session just for the recording, and that way we can come off mute at the very end. If we've got questions for each of these, at any point you can put your questions into chat. More than happy to answer and have information come in the chat space for those that are online, and I will keep an eye out on chat. So hi, welcome. Say hi, everyone. So it's always a bit of fun. Maybe put in where you're actually calling in from. Then at any point, once we get to each of the various sessions, like at the end of the speaker with Paul coming in to talk, if you can raise your hand if you do wish to come off mute, and we'll do it in order, and then at the end of the session again, once I've finished my what's new. There's closed captions you can turn on for accessibility reason. Maybe English is your second language and or you're in an area where you can't actually have your headsets connected, so it might be a bit noisy, for example. But I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land at which we're meeting from today and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. And I extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders who've joined us. Just ask that throughout this session that we're welcoming, respectful, understanding of our differences, friendly, patient, open to questions and viewpoints, because we all come at this technology with a different viewpoint, some of us more than others. So not pointing at any MVPs that would be around in any of the rooms that we're calling in from, that and more. And my opinions are my own and not reflective of anyone else's. So I just ask that we actually use appropriate gifts, means and information, things like that in chat. What have I been up to? I did say I was going to the International Cake Show, and whilst I was there, I was going to be doing Wednesday, and here's my Wednesday bust. It is so hard to do lifelike faces, like crazy hard to do lifelike faces. But anyway, I got it done over a 2-day course. I'm rather proud of myself. And if you remember rightly, in the last session, I talked about the fact that my Curiosities and Oddities piece, which was the chocolate skulls that I actually carved and created, was going up to Brisbane. I was going there for the International Cake Show. And not only did it go up, it was then centre place on one of the tables. It got a write-up into a magazine, and I even got mentioned into a very large, very glossy magazine called Delicious, talking about me created instead of created. So that was a bit of a giggle. But I did have a piece actually put out there about the work that I did, which was a little surprising and a little overwhelming, but very, very excited. It is catered, Paul. I'll get you something virtual, shall I? A virtual pizza. So let me just get on that for you. So what else have I been up to? I've been making cookies with my grandson. In fact, it is my grandson's 8th birthday today, which is very exciting. Happy birthday, Elijah. And we've got a big party coming up on Sunday, of which I may be doing a many tiered Harry Potter cake. So you get to see that one next month. Went to the Royal Easter Show, had my cake guild making some cupcakes. And of course, I got on all the fad and did make sure that I did it me in the box. I don't know if you can contain me in a box, but I might be short enough and small enough to put into one, but I'm just waiting for me to kind of burst out of it, frankly. My wheel is still the same. It hasn't had any updates since I last actually pushed it out, but it is still available for everyone in its current iteration. After all of the announcements as part of the wave 2 and with build coming up, and there's going to be a whole heap of things, and I'll have to make some more adjustments for sure, but I'll tell you when that is, and it'll go live as always on LinkedIn. It's the main place I put it. And on that note, I am now going to hand over to my guest speaker, and my guest speaker happens to be Paul. Welcome, Paul. Paul is a Microsoft MVP, somewhat newbie MVP in the scheme of things, but not necessarily new to the adoption space. But, you in this space, you might want to go through who you are and kind of what you're doing, Paul.
Sure. I'm actually going to share my slides, try and share my slides from my side.
So I'm going to stop sharing now.
Bear with me 1 second. We will see if it works.
It does indeed.
Fantastic. That's even better. So I am, well, let me just go to the agenda here first and foremost. Let me go to the next slide. So, all right, my name is Paul Cina, as Kirsty said. Kirsty and I have spent a fair chunk of time recently together in Redmond because I am a Microsoft Copilot MVP. And like Kirsty, I'm quite involved in the adoption, the user training, the skilling, and shall we say discussions with Microsoft about how we can improve things and actually make them better. I've worked in the industry for about 25 years. I jumped onto the Gen AI bandwagon about 3 years ago because I could see where it was going. And this is going to be a slightly different session to what you're used to. So don't worry, you're not in the wrong meeting. I'm probably in the wrong meeting, right? So we've done our welcome, and then we're going to talk about why it's time to party, which I like to think of as where did it all go wrong? And that's going to be a real bizarre analogy, which might explain the whole adoption piece with Copilot and with M365. What we want to get to is the fact that whilst there's a lot of noise around Copilot, Copilot everywhere, all the changes coming with Copilot, ultimately what it boils down to is nothing's changed. Mastering those fundamentals of M365 is really the key to unlocking Copilot's potential. If our users don't have that solid foundation in the technology first, they're not going to be able to leverage AI effectively. AI is really an extension of the Microsoft 365 stack and skills which users need to have. So we're not just going to talk about if, Copilot is good, if agents are a thing, or if chat is the new Clippy, which it is. We're talking about how to ensure your users are ready to leverage AI, and in this case, Copilot fully, safely, and effectively. And obviously that starts with core M365 adoption. But to that end, and also just touching on something Kirsty said at the start, there are a whole bunch of new announcements coming this week and this month around Copilot, M365, and so on and so forth. We've got some noise now from
Yes,
somewhere.
yeah. I'll fix it.
Perfect. So we have a host of announcements coming. At the moment, there's Microsoft Build coming up. As we speak, there's the M365 Community Conference in Las Vegas, the biggest M365 conference, where a whole bunch of new features will be announced. There's new Copilot features. It's really getting to that stage where there's just too much to absorb. And how do we actually drive adoption with users in something which is forever changing? But let's take a step back and let's think of Microsoft as your friend, right? Your friend who's always planning the party of the century. Work with me here. They're brilliant, they're full of energy, but maybe, just maybe, they're a little detached from the practicalities. And right now, they're obsessed with their latest idea. You probably haven't seen this press announcement from today, but you know what? They're introducing the Copilot AI butler experience. Forget your robot waiters. This is a sophisticated AI butler for every guest at your next house party. It can anticipate your needs. It can fetch drinks via drone. It engages in witty banter. You know what? It might even offer insightful life advice based on your conversations. It's really cutting edge. It's impressive. It's the absolute future of party hosting, and all your users really need to get on board with this now. It really is the next big thing. You've got to adopt it today, and Microsoft is going all in on this thing, right? They're showcasing this AI butler everywhere. We've got Satya Nadella at Ignite talking about the Copilot AI butler. They're convinced it is what every single person on the planet needs to elevate their party experience. The press is picking up on it. It's all over LinkedIn, and Satya's so excited about it, he actually even got this Copilot suit made, and he's updated the entire Microsoft mission statement. So Microsoft's mission now is to empower every person and every party on the planet to be more fun with the Copilot AI butler. Again, work with me here on the analogy. We are going somewhere with this, right? So this is this fantastic new technology, and it's everywhere, and our users are seeing it everywhere. We've got to ask, are our users ready for AI Copilot butlers? Microsoft wants you to deploy these butlers at your next house party, aka your M365 environment, for your guests, your end users. And they're ready to unleash these butlers onto guests who haven't mastered basic please and thank you, let alone how to navigate the house or use the existing party facilities properly. They're really just focusing entirely on the advanced AI butlers, assuming our users will just magically know how to interact with them effectively and responsibly. Are our users ready? Well, not according to market research. You've probably been to a party where you've seen a pile of clothes. And that's because many of our guests, our users at this party, they still struggle with the basics. They leave their coats on the floor instead of using the coat rack, in the same way our Copilot users save files to desktop instead of OneDrive and SharePoint. And the parallels don't end there, right? There are a number of users at this party who, instead of walking up and talking to people, they just shout across the room because they don't understand the basics of communication or the tools they have available to them. In the same way that we have a lot of Copilot users and M365 users who don't really understand the basics of collaboration, and they need a lot of adoption on it. But it gets worse, people. It gets much worse. What is a party without lots and lots of drinks? A boring party. And some of the guests of this party, the users, they don't even know that they can get ice from the fridge, right? They think they need to ask others how to get it, and they need to use this new vodka slushy machine. Again, very similar to our users who don't understand the basic features in Word, Excel, or Teams, and they rely on colleagues to actually do things for them, even simple tasks, or they rely on Copilot to do simple tasks, and it provides very bad output. Here's something you'll probably be familiar with, again, in our party analogy here. We spent weeks and weeks, Kirsty and I, actually doing this party etiquette course for our users. You know, we ran sessions, user groups, we did cakes and everything. We set up this great party etiquette 101 session to show people the basics of what to do at our party. And no one attended it, right? So they don't have those foundational skills they need. They actually haven't mastered the existing house rules and tools. It's not a great party so far, is it? But then as the party comes to an end, you know, they forget where to put their rubbish or where the recycling bin is, despite all the clear labels that we have. In the same way that our users just have this constant sprawl of data, unstructured data within the business, that's very similar to this. And it doesn't make for a great party at all. So what can we learn from this admittedly terrible analogy about the party and the deployment of the AI Copilot butlers? Well, trying to deploy advanced AI Copilot butlers in this party concept to untrained guests who struggle with party basics is asking for chaos, right? I mean, there's no doubt about it. The Copilot butler won't enhance the party. It would just highlight how unprepared the guests are, and it will probably cause some embarrassing incidents. You know, guests will misuse these AI Copilot butlers, just like they're misusing Copilot with poor prompting, and they'll get frustrated when it doesn't understand their vague requests, which is what we see, exactly the same thing we see with Copilot. Maybe they'll accidentally tell the AI butler sensitive secrets because they don't understand its reach, which is exactly what we see happening with Copilot and other generative AI tools. Or maybe, as we see now, they'll simply ignore it altogether because they're overwhelmed. We see this with Copilot, and the statistics back up. Whilst Microsoft has sold a lot of Copilot licenses, adoption rates aren't as high as they need to be. And the same's true with M365, where there's a lot of license sales, but when we look at active usage of M365, yes, people are using it, but are they using all the features that they've actually got within the suite of products of M365 products? And, you know, before we deploy these Copilot butlers, we desperately need to run the Party Etiquette 101 class. We need to train our users on the M365 basics, how to manage their files, how to collaborate effectively in Teams, how to use Outlook, things which I think a lot of us take for granted, but not every single user knows how to use these things. And these are basically the foundational skills you need and our users need before they can go ahead with Copilot. And we'll look at why that is. But, you know, going back to our party analogy, while you're gently trying to remind people where the bins are for your party, your friend, Microsoft, is already planning the next party pivot. There's an update coming. It's amazing. It's fantastic. Let me tell you, AI Copilot Butler is old news, right? It's old news. Forget it. Don't do any adoption on it whatsoever, because now we're doing Copilot Psychic Goldfish, who predict what hors d'oeuvre preferences are now. Your guests will work it out. There'll be adoption materials ready in 3 months. Don't worry about it. Just start promoting it to all your people. Satcha's doing it. This is the Copilot Goldfish, which can actually read your mind and do everything that you want to do. You know, this announcement just adds to your guests' confusion. They haven't even figured out the Copilot Butler basic concept, let alone Goldfish mind reading. But it's all they hear about. It's in the press, they hear about it from vendors, their bosses talk about it, it's on TV, and it's really confusing. And the whole Copilot and modern work piece now is confusing. It's confusing for us as adoption and technology specialists, and it's even more confusing for our users. What tool should they use? When should they use it? How can they get the most out of it? How do they keep up to date with it? Why has Outlook changed from when I used it a week ago or 2 weeks ago? So the basics are really important in the adoption journey. Is there a question? Sorry. No?
No, we've just had it. See, you're just dropping in and out of it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's your internet connection, I think. No.
I've got the best internet connection in the world. It's powered by Copilot. Honestly. So look, let's go back to Copilot, right? You know, Copilot is a fantastic tool, but probably is limited by user proficiency, not just in Copilot, but in M365. And that's the struggle I think a lot of us have been fighting for several years now, where we've seen a pivot by Microsoft and a lot of companies in the channel to just talk about generative AI and forget the basics. So, you know, while Copilot can streamline processes across M365 applications, and its core strength is obviously it uses business data and surfaces new insights. If our users are not familiar with foundational tools like SharePoint, Copilot's not going to be really effective. So the question really arises of, have we prepared our users adequately to tap into the advantages that Copilot offers? Or is it just going to merely amplify those existing inefficiencies and misuse of products? You know, it does integrate obviously with the M365 apps, but like I said, whilst it enhances existing workflows, it's not going to resolve poor user adoption, right, of M365. The user capability and the understanding of how to use M365 and those core tools, it must exist for Copilot to amplify them effectively. And that's where there needs to be a pivot in adoption, not just focusing on, hey, you can prompt like this, or prompting is the new gold standard. It's really about how you can effectively use SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive, all those tools so that collaboration will improve and so that Copilot can surface information. And I've got a question at the bottom there. Are users truly prepared to leverage Copilot's potential? I don't think they are today, because I think as an industry, we focused on the shiny thing, which is Copilot and generative AI, and we've forgotten about those basics. Also, you can't really do the basics when the basics are constantly changing. How many times do you log in the morning, get a message, say, oh, Teams has changed, there's a new experience, or here's a new Outlook for you, or PowerPoint's changed, and the user interface for Copilot changes regularly. You can't train someone on how to use Copilot, for example, because the interface in Word is fundamentally different to the interface in Teams, is fundamentally different to the interface in PowerPoint, and so on and so forth. But Copilot keeps getting slapped into every single product. That's the technical term, by the way, slapped in. So what do we actually do to fix this up, and how do we get back to those core M365 skills? Because like I said, it's going to enhance existing workflows, but if they're already clunky due to per user adoption, you're just going to have Copilot enhancing the clunkiness. That's not going to drive adoption, and people are going to turn away from it. So Copilot, you know, is it really an accelerator? Is it this panacea, this great new way of working, or is it just an amplifier of bad habits? You know, if our users struggle with these fundamental tools like OneDrive, Teams, etc., Copilot can't assist them. It's so critical that we train users to prevent what we call the illusion of proficiency, because then users are overconfident in using Copilot without proper knowledge of M365 and all the different tools, and that's going to lead to errors, unprofessional outcomes, and really poor adoption of Copilot. What we see is if users aren't using OneDrive, SharePoint, Copilot can't access their work. You know, this discussion we've been having for years now about migrating from on-premise to the cloud, it's even more critical in the era of AI, because Copilot can't sum a document it can't access if it's in someone's C drive. We see a lot of that with data silos, Copilot frustration hindering effectiveness. The number of users who still save files locally rather than to OneDrive, because their company hasn't actually explained the difference between local, OneDrive, all the different bits on OneDrive, the different Teams storage facilities, etc. And collaboration chaos really does limit Copilot's potential and M365 potential. You know, if people aren't using the collaboration tools they've got, and let's be frank, that's one of the key things you get with M365, then Copilot can't facilitate seamless team collaboration. You know, if one message is over here and another message is there, or someone prints a document and takes over, it's not going to provide the outcomes that you want whatsoever. Inefficient workflows restrict task management. This is the concept of if the users struggle with basic features, which they do. I mean, I struggle with basic features. I can't even find the forward as attachment button now, and Outlook has disappeared. But if our users struggle with that in the basic tools, Copilot can optimize tasks effectively. You know, if someone can't format a document correctly in Word or compose an email with the basic information they want, Copilot's not going to help them draft a well-formatted document. Yes, it can help them write an email, but if they don't know the basics of email etiquette and structure, the email will be sent faster, but it will potentially create a bad impression and not have the right information in it. So it's really about these basics, right? And the other critical piece here is our users bypass our M365 tools often. One, because they find them frustrating or they haven't had the right adoption. And that means they're bypassing security protocols. You know, if users are sending out sensitive emails, instead of either sharing it on SharePoint or using the labels, which we get in E5, then Copilot is going to inherit that information and it's going to exacerbate those risks. Stuff's going to go out from the company. It's going to cause big problems. Everyone's going to be really upset. So, you know, the illusion of proficiency really does mask user skill. So focused, I would argue, on Copilot, or at least Microsoft is at the moment, is forgetting these basic skills that people need and the basic understanding. You know, you don't just go to a car dealership and buy a car. You have to study, learn how to use it, learn what the features are before they'll let you loose on the road. It's really the same with M365. Copilot is a powerful tool. There's no doubt about it. It can enhance productivity. It can extract a lot more insights from data and really increase productivity. But it actually masks the skills gap of the average user, because rather than them having to create a PowerPoint presentation or write an email, Copilot can just do it for them, right? Which leads to overconfidence, misuse, and as we have seen, lots of errors and risks, because Copilot as an AI tool based on an LLM, it's not necessarily going to give you the correct result. Remember, generative AI is not designed to give you the right answer. It's designed to give you the answer you want to hear. And that's not going to change for the foreseeable future. So Copilot will obviously reflect and potentially magnify existing user behaviors and existing user skill gaps. The better the user adoption in M365, the better Copilot's output will be, because people will be using the tools effectively. So mastering those core applications like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Outlook, that is so critical for users to harness Gen AI and Copilot's potential. Each application obviously has its essential features, and when they are understood, they'll enhance user efficiency, productivity. People feel better at work when they know how to use the tools they've got. Because of that, adoption and training really needs to start with the basics, but then go beyond those basics, focusing on effective usage, right? So if we look at examples, you know, in Word, it's about mastering those collaboration features, formatting, templates, the review, track changes, and sharing options. Those are essential, particularly when we move to generative AI and we end up with multiple versions of the same file, different names, etc., etc. Training really needs to focus on the efficient and effective use of these tools, not just the bare minimum, and helping users actually adopt it. You know, with Word, the better users are formatting in Word, the better Copilot's going to be at drafting well-formatted documents. Garbage in, garbage out. The same is true with Excel. You know, people need proficiency in basic formulas. The number of people who don't understand basic formulas is crazy. And more now we're saying, well, just let AI do it, let Copilot do it. But you need to be able to fact check and error check those formulas, know how to do data tables, charting, all these sorts of things. PowerPoint, obviously, Copilot now pulls together PowerPoint slides. They're not great, let's be frank. So knowing the basics of PowerPoint and how to use slide masters, layouts, styles, and sharing beyond just bullet points is pretty important, which is kind of ironic given the way these slides look, but that's a whole separate conversation. And then Outlook, you know, the bugbear of all bugbears with its multiple different versions at the moment. It's crazy adoption where it changes every day and features are missing. But that requires skills, basic skills in composing, how you integrate OneDrive when you share files, labels for sensitivity, managing folders and calendars. Again, the more effectively users use their Outlook calendar, the better Copilot can schedule meetings, summarize past events. Ultimately, these are the basics of adoption. And obviously there's Teams, which has channels, it has the files tab. It's got all the integration everywhere of every single thing, whether it's Planner, OneNote, OneDrive, and more. If people don't understand how to use these features, they won't get the most A out of the features they've got in M365, but B out of Copilot, particularly as it relates to meetings, and particularly as we start to see the deployment of the word I hate, agents everywhere in businesses, whether they're prepackaged or not prepackaged. So we need those basic building blocks for Copilot interactions, and it needs to all be centered on M365 because it'll enhance what users are already doing in these apps. But if they struggle with the basics, Copilot isn't going to perform miracles, despite Microsoft telling you it will. So how do we go from zero to hero? What are those practical steps for driving M365 adoption? You know, it requires a structured approach where we look at assessing user proficiency through multiple different methods. And I don't by any means have the answers to this, so I want to have a discussion with you about it. But it's really about assessing user proficiency through surveys, polls to understand their habits. And then it's about targeted adoption that focus on specific skill gaps, not like 3-week-long courses, but bite-sized sessions or online resources. There are a plethora of them. A key thing which works well is champions programs, which I think you're all familiar with. They can be really beneficial, and that's where power users in the business support their colleagues. And they actually drive the adoption, and they drive this FOMO, this fear of missing out. Importantly, we've got to communicate why people should be using these tools and why they are valuable, not just how to use them, what's in it for the end user, you know, in terms of all these different tools. And if I could get my slides to progress, you'd actually see all of that on the screen. But for some reason, they're all hidden, so I can't actually show you them. Oh, yes, I can. Here we go. So assess current user proficiency through surveys, observations, and the adoption score in the M365 Center. That's really useful, not just for M365, but also for Copilot. It lets us see which users are using which tools, how often they're using them, and what they're actually using them for. And that's an area Microsoft is not just doubling, but tripling down in at the moment, which gives us really valuable inputs to customize our adoption and training for our users. Targeted training to address those specific skills gaps. But the important thing here is you need to adapt and repeat that training because things change. People forget stuff, right? The Champions program we spoke about, something we find really useful in my company is regular M365 mentors or Copilot coach sessions. It's basically like a fortnightly meeting, opt-in, people don't have to come, where people go through what they've used M365 or Copilot for that week. And what it does is it unlocks use cases we'd never have thought about in the business from people who we wouldn't think of as, you know, hardcore users of Copilot or M365, but they are sharing what they're learning, driving other people to adopt those tools and try things out and building their confidence in the tools. Importantly, as I said, you've got to communicate the why. This is not just about, oh, well, we're deploying M365 because companies bought it, or we're deploying Copilot because it's cool. Don't just show them how to use the tools, explain why it's beneficial to them. What is the benefit to the user of actually adopting these tools and investing their time in training and adoption? You know, most of all, and this is really critical, don't get fixated on all the new features which land every single day, week, month. You know, agents, this new team planner agent, this new UI for Copilot, all these things. Focus on the basics, build the foundation, and then you can expand out from that. But we have to go back to the core, driving that M365 adoption. And like that's what I wanted to go through with you, but I'm willing to open, not willing, I'm happy to open up to questions and answers, thoughts, and so on and so forth. See what you guys think. I'll just stop presenting.
Thanks, Paul. What I'll do is I will take people off the forced mute. I don't know, one off forced mute, they can come off themselves. I actually done the disable of microphones. But just please feel free to raise your hand or put anything in chat if you've got any questions that you wish to ask. Anyone got any? No one in the room? On the line? Not seeing any hands up at the moment. I know, Paul, we've talked about this an awful lot, and that
Ad nauseum.
yeah, to say the least. You know, because we're seeing a lot of businesses at the moment, all of a sudden they're, you know, I think the one thing about the pandemic was it forced everyone to kind of go to Teams, but it didn't necessarily force their documents and information to come over. So we're seeing all these migrations going on, or their big rollouts, or SMB as a whole industry are finally starting to move to the cloud. So we're seeing all this sort of struggle of coming over. They all want AI, but so many of them haven't understood the fundamentals. And, you know, we talk about it a lot. And that whole, and in all the webinars I'm doing, it's like, and you know, you can use Copilot in Loop, and they go, what's Loop? So there's that fundamental, and you know, we've talked about this a whole heap, and how it's actually a real struggle at the moment, for right across the industry. And I'm moving cameras. There's cameras everywhere in the room in different spots, so I'm just going to adjust it in terms of the camera, so you can see me a little bit more. There we go. Sorry, doesn't matter. Kind of one. Yes, hang on. We've got a question in the room.
Yeah, it's not really a question. It's more of a comment.
Comment.
But I guess you know, when you're working for a business that has never thought that adoption is a primary need, and then management go, oh, apparently AI is going to solve all our problems. Can you go do that? And it's very difficult to sort of go, well, yeah, we need to step back a little and maybe do that thing that we were going to do 2 years ago, or 5 years ago.
I got 2 dogs.
Yeah.
Kirsty, I'd like to add to so that
Yes.
interesting
Hang on.
happened
Yep.
to me is in addition to this, clients ask us, can we, because they're facing these problems, they say, we need some training. We say, at the minimum needs 2 days of training to help some of your semi-technical people to understand all these relationships, fix some stuff. I say, oh, that's too much money.
It's too much money, yeah. And it's the same message again and again, that they're not taking adoption and change seriously. And the budgets that we're generally seeing at the moment that's focused on it is just purely on the training, not on the adoption and the change, and they're low budget. And it's like it's been an issue always. Even Amazon sort of putting in their massive drop in training. There's so much free info online, but they're missing those foundational and the fundamentals. I absolutely agree. We've got, I mean, and I just show it. There's so many videos and content, but people need more than that. They need the hand holding, and we're not seeing the hand holding. The assumption is it's that, you know, just in time, they'll go watch the video if they want to. But the industry as a whole in learning understand that it's around about 26% of people will actually draw from online learning when it comes to e-learning and things like that. It's never a particularly high percentage. So you've got really big gaps. You know, Adriana's asked the best resources for helping users to become more efficient in the M365 environment. What do you think, Paul? I have opinions, but what are your thoughts?
There's so many. I mean, there's Microsoft Learn, if you want to actually train yourself, has multiple courses updated on a regular basis. Dare I say it, Kirsty, there's adoption.microsoft.com, which has multiple resources around each one of the features within the M365 stack, as well as Copilot. There are multiple resources out there, but I think the interesting thing is, if we look back on the last 3 years since what was Bing Chat Prize came out and ChatGPT, what we saw with Microsoft is this assumption that people are just going to want to buy these products and they're just magically going to work out how to use them. It's nonsense. And Microsoft realized it was nonsense, which is why they then pivoted to, oh, we need to do art of the possible to show what these products can do. And then they pivoted again, and now they've pivoted to business value. We need to show the business the value of Copilot, of M365. But what's missing in all of this is the adoption, the end user adoption and training.
Yeah.
And that's something Kirsty and I will continue to fight for with our colleagues at Microsoft, isn't there, Kirsty?
Oh, yeah. You know, we got a WhatsApp chat going, did you see this? Oh, my Lord. You know, we kind of talk about these sorts of things all the time, because It is a real struggle, and when we're sitting in this adoption space, it's getting more and more complex. The ecosystem is more and more complex. So people aren't just picking things up as simply as what we think, because there's so many possible combinations and people just want to get their job done, and to try and teach, it does take quite a bit. So, Adriana, you talk about it, and, when we start to break it down, the more microbyte type training that we can do inside a business that's run regularly with little microbyte of, videos and information constantly running out to try and deconstruct it even a little bit and pull it apart and those scenarios. But Microsoft are jumping straight over the top now and want to do the agents. And the agents is getting into really complex solutions, and people don't even know what the difference is between Copilot Chat and Microsoft 365 Copilot. So, they don't understand the fundamental basics, and they're jumping straight to the really complex and pushing it now because they're kind of going, we've done the Copilot bit, now we're moving on to the next big thing that will give us money, and that doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be right for our end users. And they're struggling.
I think it's worse, Kirsty. It's actually worse than that, because the agent's conversation, if we take a step back, right, the original conversation was AI won't replace you, it will enhance your productivity.
Yes,
well, the roadmap from Microsoft and every other vendor, whether it's Salesforce, Google, doesn't matter, is the future is now going to be teams of agents and teams of humans, potentially agent bosses.
Yeah.
So that's another old piece, we have to drive with users to deal with the consequences of that and how that works. But Microsoft and other big players, they're not actually thinking through the end user impact or how we message that to end users, adopt agents while dealing with those issues and mitigating them.
Yeah, and it's even they've stepped back a bit on saying it won't take over jobs, because we're actually seeing it take over jobs.
That's right.
They step back. And the other thing, Adrian, you've put in there, do we frame training as easier, efficient, a good idea? Microsoft have actually pulled back a bit on saying it's going to make you more efficient, it's going to be, increase your productivity, these sorts of words, because it's then saying that they're not already efficient, they're not already doing potentially a good job, they're not already. So they've been saying we need to be really careful, because it's then giving it real negative connotations going, so we've had to change some of that, the language that we actually talk about this technology, of what does it actually mean really when it comes to their jobs.
It's a good question.
Yeah. There's plenty that we can talk about. We can debate this, but let's move over. Unless there's anything in particular to put in chat, I will start going over to the what's new, because there's plenty going on in the 365 space. If I can find my mouse. Here we go. Rightio. Go back over here. Move me this back this way, so that I can share my screen again. Okay. And getting underway, but please feel free to keep putting information into chat if you wish to, because there's plenty that we can talk about in this space without a doubt. So happy to keep chatting about it. Let's just walk our way through now some of the what's new in the adoption space. Thank you so much, Paul. Appreciate it, because I know it's a topic that's very close to our heart in the adoption space. So, what's new now in terms of the release notes? It went from not having an awful lot online to having an awful lot online. Of course, it's like all things, as quick as you blink, there's not a lot, and then there's plenty. And I am trying to focus really around the what's new in adoption rather than what's new to features. And even then, the one downside of doing the what's new to adoption is it does have a bit of a focus then in terms of the new technology, because the adoption content that's being created is around the likes of Windows 365, Windows 11, you know, what's going on the latest in terms of Planner, what's going on in Copilot and some of the Viva space. So that's you know, that sort of tends to be a lot of the focus in terms of the adoption content. The latest champions calls that went out there, I would actually recommend if you go in and download the latest one in April, there's actually some really good slides and some videos in there that will focus on adoption. There's a few things that might actually help you with your training if you're building decks and things like that, to be able to support you as to, you know, what's going on. And there's the Mondays at Microsoft always out there, and you know, the latest sessions, sometimes they do tend to be a little bit technical with the guys, considering they are in the adoption space. Heather does slide more into the technical, so it can sometimes get a little technical, but they're generally pretty good to go and watch the latest. I don't know if you've heard about the new Frontier firms. There's a whole new site as well as the white paper that's gone out there. The Frontier firm is very much about those that have gone right into Copilot and getting into the agentic look and feel. They're now being called a Frontier firm. And some of the information and the research that's actually going out there is, you know, well, what is it that makes an actual Frontier firm that's kind of driving forward this new look and feel? And it was interesting, some of the responses that kind of came in as to what they considered a good Frontier firm. Some of the least frequent responses, I still kind of found that rather interesting. The fear of human judgment as to one of the reasons why they reach out to Copilot to ask the question. I thought was an interesting one. Friction of sometimes working with colleagues. It's easier to ask an agent or an individual. So I kind of thought these were interesting challenges, the behavioural challenge that we can sometimes see around the fear. The demands of working with colleagues and credit hogging. I thought these were rather interesting statistics that were coming into play when we're looking at Frontier firms. Now, you want to have a look. I highly recommend going in and having a look at the white paper. From there is the whole Frontier program as well. So you can go and have a look on that particular site. You will note that it's very much about that more technical, getting into the agent space. And although we may not necessarily be building a lot of those agents and things ourselves, we will need to actually understand them because they're getting in very much being built as a plug and play for our end users to be able to work with. And the thing is, it's going to be so, there's a whole heap out of the box, but there's going to be so many that are customized. So if we haven't kind of got our head around what it is or why they're doing, I think it's going to drive forward you know, a few new ways of doing things. The masterclasses are now all done, all 6 of them. So I put in here for you the links to be able to catch up on all of those classes now. The most recent ones that have gone live is number 5. So here in terms of the doing live events, when it comes to AMAs and live events, as well as then some of the analysis was the last kind of 2. The Microsoft adoption site, when it comes to its Copilot space, has had a massive revamp, guys, massive revamp. They've adjusted around the look and feel of it completely. So if you do have screenshots in your training and presentation and things like that on, you know, this is where you can go and what it looks like. They've made some interesting adjustments to the look and feel. It was funny, I was showing Caruana my adoption site. She sort of went, why would you need to do that? I'm trying to make it so it's easy to do it this way. And I went, well, there's a few things that are going on. One, they don't know if they're downloading. They don't know if it's leading to a website. They're not quite sure. And so I find it really interesting that all of a sudden, what are the top priority? Because I had my top 5 things. So yeah, there's a few things I think to make it a little bit clearer on here, which I do particularly like as a bit of an index as to what you're going to find when you go in and go and grab those things, a bit more diagrams. The scenario page has had complete revamps of the scenario page. So now, and unfortunately, I don't know if you can see it there on the screen, but it actually states that it's got, I can't do it from here. I got the pen, here we go. Right here, the pen, and go right here. It's actually got back end having some issues being able to download a lot of these packs at the moment. It's like, okay, so I couldn't download any, but supposedly there has been some updates to a few of the scenarios. In the dashboard, when you go in, it's had a bit of a revamp in the pull down. And I had reached out a couple of weeks ago because there was real issues with the way that it was rendering on the page. You couldn't actually scroll down, you couldn't get to the information, you couldn't download things. And I got told, don't worry, it's going to have a complete revamp coming out in the next day or so. So, but I had, it'll be interesting to see what this looks like. Some of the drop downs are the things that you can actually grab. It's easier now. And some of that is like, what are you getting in terms of stuff like the day in the life of guides, which supposedly have had a bit of an update. So the look and feel of the pages have had an update in the day of the life of, and then you've got things like you can go download, and supposedly some of those have had a bit of an update as well based on the latest technology. There is a lot of them, so I'm not sure which ones. They haven't actually stated which ones have been updated. So if you do keep a repository of these things, you might want to go download the latest ones and or just get them as you need them, considering how frequently things changed. On the Adoption Success Kit, there's actually been some updates. So those updates down the bottom here, things like, and I'm going to go through it, you've got the digital swag, the licensing allocation, and the adoption planning checklist. Although there's not a lot that's in the checklist, it's pretty basic. There's been just a few little changes. So it's had a bit of an update to its page. The digital swag I particularly like. In there is all sorts of little things like your, you can actually bring down the background that kind of sits behind your pick, your circular picture to say, are you a Copilot champ, for example, stuff that you could actually roll out across your organization, including, you know, taglines at the bottom of signatures if they're a Copilot champ, all these different great digital swag to be able to support you, teams' backgrounds, I'm a champ, that kind of thing. So if you are in this space as well, you might want to even put some of those behind you. The adoption planning checklist, it's always been pretty basic. It's still very basic. It says it's updates. Can't see too much what's actually different, but it has had a few little things here and there. If you're coming in, the license allocation guide, it does talk a bit about the end user kind of adoption side of things in terms of ensuring that you've got your licenses actually aligned correctly to the individual user. So there is some decent information in there around how it actually supports better adoption by having the right people ultimately with the license. There's the one of those master clubs. It's in the wrong spot. It's all good. The customer hub actually has a whole heap more content that's gone out, all these live recordings, videos, as well as sessions that are coming up. And I particularly like some of the stuff that's in there. And if you haven't gone in there previously, I've brought it up a few times. There are some fabulous presentations underneath all of these videos and recordings that you can download so that you're not reinventing the wheel. There was recently some sessions and they are continuing, and the recordings will hopefully go live in terms of the building psychological safety webinars. I'm looking forward to some of that content that's actually coming back from it to be able to put it up for you. Some of it has actually gone online on the Viva space, but there's still some more to come. If you haven't actually gone to it before, Microsoft have got their public sector roadmap and they have a newsletter of all the things that are going on in the public sector. And, you know, that then flows through in terms of Gov, the GCC, as to what's being rolled out. If you happen to be sitting underneath that banner, really until it hits the US version for government, it's not actually going to be rolling out to Australia in government. So keep an eye out on that particular newsletter and the roadmap for you. Project Manager in Planner demo. There's a demo that's come through, something else that's come through on a recent blog post. I'll have it coming up in a minute. I believe it's in the Insiders blog. That Project Manager is effectively, when it comes to project for the web, being deprecated for your Project Manager like Planner, basically. So it's, yeah, it's interesting that this sort of project for the web has been deprecated technically with a bit of a rename of Planner. Okay. So if you want to, you can go and have a look. If you haven't actually seen the new Project Manager, it allows you, if you've actually got a license, to go in and become and be a full Project Manager agent, which will help you. So it's an agent that's built in now as part of your project/planner environment. So there's new agents. So as I said, if you're not familiar with agents, it is time to get yourself familiar with agents. It is driving forward through everything in the ecosystem fast. Thank you, Paul. I can see he's had to drop. I appreciate you coming in. Windows 11 now has its own adoption site. There is very little to do with adoption on the adoption site. It's very much focused on the technical. Unfortunately, there is a little bit that's in there. I'm going to go through a couple of those things. But even there is like one of those learning demos that you can click through. And when I went into it, it's got a whole heap that's not so much about Windows 11. I think I've got the link in here. I'll show you in a minute. It's more focused on, you know, you've got the Copilot button on your Windows, and this is how you get in and you deal with working in your documents in your OneDrive. And there's like all these other topics that aren't really sort of Windows focused. When we're talking about what's new to Windows 11, they're things that I ordinarily wouldn't necessarily dive into. I did like some of the stuff that's actually come out in things like the snipping tool and a few things. There was a couple of little surprises that were in there, but overarching, I kind of went, why is that in the Windows 11 session? It was a bit interesting. They've also got the Windows 365 adoption site now as well. And on that particular site, I have messaged them because the user guide, the user quick start guide does not actually download. So it's not there. I said, we need to fix that. But there is a trainer's guide and a user FAQ. So the trainer's guide is kind of a bit of a Word document, a step-by-step of what to do. Here's that Windows 11 guided simulation as to, you know, what's going to be in there. It was interesting, not necessarily probably what I would put in for that guided simulation. Copilot Chat for all users. There's a whole heap of sessions that you can actually register now for regards to Copilot Chat for you and your business on unlocking Copilot Chat. Because with it now driving through the 365 ecosystem, the reality is people don't understand the difference between clicking on the Copilot button and or clicking in search on their main homepage that says Microsoft 365 Copilot. So there's all sorts of confusion as to what's going on with Copilot Chat. They're pushing out a whole heap of, you know, register sessions to be able to help you around Copilot Chat that are all free if you want to get involved. There's the corporate communications blog. I have talked just a little bit about this in the past, but there's some really cool information that's actually going on in the corporate communications space, especially when it comes to some of those AI things. There's the prompting for communicators, which was the first of the Friday session. So I'll bring up a couple of them. There's one whole page now about media and entertainment when it comes to adoption. And there's a kit in there. So I would go in and potentially download that kit. There's actually some quite good stuff that sits inside that kit. It's mainly just a presentation around some of the scenarios and a couple other things. But what I particularly liked was the first Friday for AI communicators. There's prompting, and in there was some great prompts that they actually pushed out as part of that video around sort of the media kind of comms sort of space of different things. And it's not even just like a focus purely on the comms. There's some other interesting information in there as well. So one to go and potentially have a watch. I did like the thought processes when it came to AI is that third dimension of work now, because at one point, because we're all in the office, and then all of a sudden we went home and now we're back into hybrid. What does that mean now when we bring AI into it as a component? We're now in this kind of this new space between, you know, people home, people office, sitting in there, our time, what we're doing with it, and bringing AI as part of that over the top. It just created this whole new dimension of work and working in the workspace. One to go watch, actually. Hard to kind of explain. They explain it so much better than me. Yeah. There is a new Copilot Chat page. This new Copilot adoption chat page is then driving in as part of that journey. It's got both a chat. It's had a bit of a revamp and a refresh. So as I said, the adoption site, there's been a ton of revamp and refresh. So this is the Copilot Chat. And then you get into things like the 365 Copilot and the 30-day AI productivity journey. So there's all sorts of great there's little slider pieces of information down the bottom of what you can do in that 30-day journey. We've got Copilot and Agents Discovery Day is actually coming up both in Sydney and Canberra, run by the Microsoft team. if it's something that you might be interested in going into, it is the promptathons. I have run the promptathons alongside Microsoft. It was a combination. First couple were actually the prompting. Then we were doing the Copilot and agents. Microsoft have got 2 more that are across these 2 sites. So you may have a particular one that you can register for if you're wanting to go along. Great team. Whereas John Barrett is running the one in, looks like he's part of the one in Sydney, and Rishi is actually a part of the one in Canberra if you're based in Canberra and you are part of potentially Corp and Gov and you want to go along and register. Those that sit across in the partner ecosystem, we wouldn't be allowed to go. This would be very much a client base. So if you're interested in going for your particular organisation, I'm sure it would probably be capped in terms of people. So, but one to have a look at. Recently, there was an AI Skills Fest, and there is a session catalogue as part of that AI Skills Fest. And in there is some interesting information between presentations and some of the videos. There was some great bits of content. A lot of it was repeated because it sort of went across the sessions. But if you were looking at going in there, you can see there's things like challenges, digital, Guinness World Records. They were trying to break a record in terms of the amount of people doing AI on a particular day. The hackathon, which we've talked about the hackathon previously, and we put up who were the winners of the hackathon. It was all part of this Skills Fest. And then there's the live and the on-demand. So a lot of that on-demand stuff you can actually watch. And then some of the other content around the live has then become recorded and on demand. So there's a few. I did do a bit of a filter based on topic and language because it was running all over the globe. So you might just have to do that filter. And I have put that in as part of the session catalogue. Oh, okay. So this was a fun one. So Microsoft have actually put up their Copilot Virtual Skillings Event Framework. This is like doing those promptathons effectively. Lots of different skilling. There's camps, Copilot camps, and things that you can do inside your organization to actually upskill. Now, on this particular site, let me walk my way through. We've got a few things going on. There's building daily habits. There's the art of prompting. There's the skilling event framework and kickstarting. Now, as I worked my way through, there were step-by-steps in terms of the daily habits on how to actually do things across the likes of Outlook and PowerPoint and Word. And so it's got all this Copilot, chat meeting recap. I've kind of collapsed down all the sections so that you can see with a step-by-step. This is editable. Even the pictures that have got all the boxes around them, you can adjust them to your own colors and you'll be able to reuse or potentially get your own screenshots. At least it gives you an idea of a flow that you could use without reinventing the wheel as a structure. So I particularly like that one. I love finding those kind of little gold nuggets that are out there. It has, in terms of the art of prompting, the interesting one, it was actually focused on photos, and it has a step-by-step kind of, each one of these components is effectively broken out across a whole heap of pages. This is that kind of final page of bringing it all in together of how to sort of create things across that photo world, which I thought was interesting for the art of prompting. Might not necessarily be the way that I would go, but I thought it was an interesting one in terms of people liking to just play around with pictures as a bit of a gateway. In there was another one that was the skilling framework. It has the elements of that camp structure that I was talking about, running a Copilot camp. So there's badges, there's, what's your reward system actually look like, with a ton of links at the end to be able to help and support you. So you want to run your own AI kind of camps internally, this is what you can do. Now, what I particularly loved was, I'm going to bring it up just a sec. So the very last presentation was actually called the Kickstart, how to kickstart with AI. Guess what I found in the Kickstart presentation? So I might have had a bit of a dance this morning to see in the Microsoft Virtual Skillings, it's on the main Copilot Success page, the download kit and the virtual event. Unfortunately, it's the older version of my wheel. It's not the latest one with all the Copilot across all the applications. I have reached out to the lady that made it. I'm not sure I can get a hold of her, but I will also pass it on to Elizabeth in the room and get her to get them to update. So it's got all of, right before it, it's got Copilot across the ecosystem from both an end user and a technical perspective. And then for 365 is my wheel. No, it hasn't got the information source, but it does have my copyright information down the bottom in terms of on-point solutions. So that's all. That was all very exciting. I might have done a bit of a skip and a dance to see it go into the Microsoft Decks. Yay! So from there, Caruana has put out a piece in regards to storytelling for change champions. How to actually do it. It doesn't go for very long. It's around about 6 minutes, but it's a good little one that maybe if you've got change champions around what does it take to do a good story. So it's a bit of a skill set for them, because we would like, wherever possible, and if you haven't, get your champs to start telling stories. This is how we actually increase adoption, no matter what the topic is. If you can get your champs to understand good storytelling, you can then put them in and get them to show different technology. A great way to be able to do training without doing training. Now, use your champs as your mentors. New ClipChamp Day in the Life of guides have actually gone live on the scenario site. So if you want to see some of those ClipChamp guides, we're seeing a lot happening with ClipChamp. In fact, if you have a look at some of the Copilot Wave 2, a lot of things that are actually going on in the back end and some of the designer and the way that ClipChamp is going, we're going to see it embedded more and more across our ecosystem when it comes to things around video. There is some new adoption guides around accessibility. So a few more have actually gone in now. So they're getting quite a repository of a day in the life of when it comes to accessibility. The leading in the era of AI. This is a senior leadership landing page now in regards to AI building council as well. In fact, the Microsoft, I didn't put it in, I just remembered, the Microsoft Reactor have actually just taken live a session that's coming up very soon with Sonia, who's up in Brisbane, around creating your centre of excellence. So one I would highly recommend, go on to YouTube and you can you'll be able to see it come up once it's recorded, and or there's the registration on the Reactor. They will pull it out in Meetup, so it will be on the Meetup. If you haven't followed the Reactor Meetup, I would recommend it because there's lots of information in there. There is a new CIO AI playbook. I particularly liked this one. In there, it actually does go across the kind of the catalyst. I can't say I'm overly loving sometimes the CIO really being over a lot of the AI, but it's really important that they are. We have to very much consider, though, who are the other people to be the champions or the evangelists across the business, apart from just the CIO. But there is some great resource summary at the very end with lots of fabulous links to other information. It's quite a comprehensive and long AI playbook, one to go and have a look at. As I said, a lot of the content is always focused because this is the latest topic is AI. There's the new AI strategy roadmap that's actually in there as well. This is something, I think it was like 72 pages long, this presentation. Fabulous information in there. If you start to have a look at some of the information, one of them over here on the left is really getting into things like our organisation and culture and really talking about some of that stuff that for us, in that adoption space, live in change and that whole cultural shift is really important to us. So there's plenty in there for you to go and have a look through. The Chat Success Kit had some updates in terms of its look and feel. There is a new piece that's actually come out down the very bottom here. So 4 steps to adoption handout. It's pretty basic. So I wouldn't say it's something that I'm not sure I wouldn't be putting this in front of my end user. This is for an adoption specialist maybe, but it's still pretty basic. I'm not sure whether we really get a lot of value out of it personally, unless you are fairly new to the adoption space. The recent Copilot Wave 2 announcements. In the announcements, there was so much fabulous content, things that we got to see over at MVP Summit back in March. There's a couple of videos, there's blogs that have come out apart from Satya. If you haven't seen what's going on in terms of the big Wave 2 announcements, a lot of this is going to be demoed at Build, of which there will be kind of recordings and things like that. A lot of this has come out because it's coming into the Microsoft 365 conference, the big conference that's actually overseas in the US. as part of these pages, Lisa Crosby, good old Lisa, who's an Aussie girl, has put out, and I put here for you, her bit of a, simpler view of what those changes look like. They're mainly sort of screenshots throughout her video, but she kind of breaks it down and just makes it that little bit easier for us to actually understand. It's a little bit more, I suppose, taking out some of the more technical layman terms and simplifying it for us. So I do love the way that she does what she does. A couple of things to really take note of in terms of some of this content. Copilot notebooks. Okay, so when we were over at MVP Summit, Paul's still not on the call. I don't know if you were there, Emma, but there might have been a bit of a, why are we calling them notebooks, guys? There was quite a few heated discussions in the room. One might have been me, particularly loud, but we've got it, whether we like it or not. There is going to be some confusion between a notebook when it comes to the, OneNote notebook to the Copilot notebook. A Copilot notebook is actually based off Loop. So we're kind of creating these Loop books. So we've got information driving more and more into Loop. If we aren't familiar with Loop and our Loop pages, which is on the back of Copilot, it is time to get yourself familiar with Loop. It is becoming a bit of a backbone because it's this fluid framework with components that can be dragged and dropped and put elsewhere. There's still lots of limitations in regards to loops and what you can do on the page. The team is working hard on a lot of that sort of stuff, but there is still some real frustration around Loop pages. But we do now have notebooks, as well as workspaces, as well as pages, as well as components, as well as OneNote books, as well as Windows notes, as well as sticky notes, as well as, I'm sorry, I might have said all of this maybe in the session at MVP Summit when there was a few more. But anyway, things to take into consideration. Go watch them. What's happening though, in terms of some of this Copilot, some of the new capabilities, and as part of, I love some of the stuff in the Copilot search. There's some really good stuff in the Copilot search there, guys. So go have a watch of it if you haven't actually seen it. On the Copilot, the Microsoft 365 blog, there's a great one there around getting the most out of your OneNote files. It's coming back around, showing us a bit more about OneNote, which I thought was really interesting with the advent of pages going out there, reiterating the things that you can do in OneNote. No, OneNote is not dying. OneNote is getting more and more heavily integrated in as a system. It was always a bit standalone. The main thing it was always integrated with was Outlook and sending information from Outlook, in and sort of back and forward between them, and or just print to OneNote. There was a bit of Excel integration, but now we're seeing more and more of that Loop integration as around meetings and being able to take notes and put components in, and they're making changes around Copilot and working with it so that we can just do more than Copilot on a one page. We want to be able to do Copilot across sections and across books. So there's things that, we kind of go, these are things that we kind of need, guys. So we'll see what happens there. In the M365 blog as well, the one thing I really have put a bit of information around is what's going on around the AI adoption score, because that is now embedding as part of the standard reporting, because we've actually got Copilot Chat. It couldn't just be in the remit of, unless you've got a license now. Are people using Copilot Chat? So we're seeing more and more coming into the standard adoption score. There is a whole new report that's come about and in play. And it's like, if you've ever had a look at it, it's like you get a percentage of where you're at in comparison to the rest of the businesses. So it's when users actually engage in your Copilot for 3 or more days a week, supposedly the lasting habit is the one thing there. And then to reach the score of 100, they must have reached or exceeded an average of 3 days of usage per week over 28 days. So it's over a month. So if we're seeing low adoption scores in this piece, then that's something you might look at as an adoption program to be able to work with. Okay, so there's a whole heap there in terms of links and what does it actually mean. The scores, it helps you around, you can send messages out directly through the adoption score to be able to help lift the usage and information, and so it's all driving out as part of that kind of back end, and they're all kind of connected together around the adoption score. There was the Think Like a People Scientist webinar series that's actually been coming about. It's they occasionally do it. If you go in and you have a look, there's a new one coming up, Leading AI Change with Employee Sentiment. And, I don't know if you remember, but back when last month, we actually had, in terms of the change management, asking in Copilot about the sentiment, even in a meeting. What did that sentiment actually look like? So we're seeing more and more of this, how do people feel coming through? The tech community blog in here, there was there anything in particular? Oh, immediately, the main focus is it does have the blog in regards to the work trend index, so you can see it in the blog. It's got all of the what's new in Copilot. There's some fundamentals in there to have a look at. If we look at the main one on this particular page that I really wanted to focus on, if you haven't seen it, guys, it's called, it's hard to do it on this little tiny screen, people skills. Go look at people skills. This is new AI functionality, and there's also a people skills agent. We had Delve in the past. This is effectively Delve on steroids. It's kind of the new piece around trying to find people and based on skill sets in the business. There's a whole heap. I'm having a chat with the product manager to see if I can get him to come and speak with us very specifically around people skills and what this actually looks like. So I think it's one that we would need to understand because it shows gaps in people's skills. It drives forward into HR. It talks, goes into things like training, the things we might need to do. And so there's a whole heap going on across people skills, one to have a look at. So the people skills piece, you can see here, Copilot skills and agent analytics. It's got all feeds into your profile card as well. It's quite integrated. It's got all part of that organizational explorer, companions into Viva Learning and tying in through to learning. There's a lot happening in this space. One to go watch the video if you haven't seen it. In the Viva, there's a lot that's been going on across the Viva space, but at the same time, I showed last month the Think Like the Scientist, the IT, HR. We did talk about that one last month. That one, we talked about the recording if you wanted to attend the event to register for the end. This is actually then off the back of it, and it's the recording and it's the blog if you want to go and see that. On the Insiders blog, it's got in here an awful lot about PowerPoint in the Insiders blog, some of the changes that are actually going on. One to dive into, there's so much around Copilot. Their main functionality of what I'm seeing over the last month is very much focused on them cleaning up a few things around PowerPoint. Okay? And it really needs it. It's been struggling. If you haven't seen it, there's the new facilitator agents coming into meetings to be able to support you to build and design and capture actions that you can work together as a team on the facilitator agents inside your meeting. So one of those new features that will be flowing in. There's the OneDrive blog, and as part of that OneDrive blog and OneDrive office hours that they actually flow through, you can go register the sessions that are coming up May 21st and 18th. If you haven't actually watched them, this is the way that they push their information out now. They don't do a blog, they do the videos. So the videos will then give you what are they doing and what are they up to. And this is one of the reasons why I'm no longer doing a what's new, because it is just, I can't even keep up now with the blogs and the information personally, let alone articulate it in the 3 or 4 days I used to do to put all this together. So guys, I'll give you what I can to give you direction towards some of the new content, but we would be going for hours now if I do what's new. The pit stop in regards to SharePoint and some of the functionality, I like the fact that OneDrive has got some of the components coming into it around questions on meetings in your OneDrive. It wasn't there previously, considering we got recordings and all sorts of things driving in now to our OneDrive. We've got Copilot actually coming across that as a repository. So there's a few functionalities that are going in there too. In the Teams blog, there's a bit going on around Teams rooms and some of that functionality in there. One to go have a bit of a read of. In the Planner blog, you can see it transitioning to Microsoft Planner and retiring Microsoft Project for the web. It is the first one there. You're going to have to do some messaging around that one, because if they're used to going to Project on the web, it is not going to be Project on the web soon. In the Excel blog, there was a couple of few little features and functionality. I like the fact that you can do now I can do one though, upload an image into your Copilot from Excel, from your phone into Excel, which I thought was a little interesting, but there are some few things. Don't forget, there's the foundational training. We've got the art of the prompt. Last month I said you couldn't actually download it. I reported the fact that it was broken. You now can download that presentation. So that is available. Yay. There's plenty on the community days, often at 1 o'clock in the morning for us. As always, you can always go and look at the community answers. If you've got something that you've got that you don't agree with, or you need something, it's on answers and they will respond to you there if you're having some problems. In terms of events and conferences, I spoke last month about doing the Copilot Corner for the Microsoft Reactor. It's an 11-part series that I'm actually running on all things Copilot. I have now done 3 sessions. The 3 sessions that are live is the art of prompting. I've then done number 2. It's not actually on that list, but number 2 was then Copilot Chat versus Microsoft 365 Copilot. I did Microsoft Teams last Wednesday, and next Wednesday is going into Outlook. So I'm running across the whole productivity suite in this productivity series for you. They are a hard and fast 30 minutes, bit like my user group. So if you don't mind that, but you can rewatch the recordings. We've had absolutely fabulous, not only attendance, but registration and watching the videos. It's been, sitting at around about, 600 odd people per video so far, watching them after the series as well. So one to go have a look at if you wish to. There's always the Microsoft events catalogue of different things that are happening, the events days, the conferences all around the world, what's going on. And of course, where do you find all your information? I've got all of the different resources and links, as always, for you to be able to go in and previous and what are the current user groups. Our next session is running on the 3rd of June at 4 p.m. So 3rd of June, so that is in the afternoon. We'll see how we track on that particular day, but there are also some changes here and there. And don't forget, we've got Brisbane. So if you are Brisbane based, please come along. We're running it at the library in the city there, and you can join in. Chris is in the room there helping and supporting, and always appreciate a bit of support around Australia. The presentation, it can be found. I will put the link for Paul's presentation into mine. It's not there just yet, but it will be very soon. And don't forget, if you need to reach out, you always can come and chat and talk with me. I'll go in. I'll just double check and I'm zooming. Zoom. Let me just double check and make sure, because I don't think we had any other questions coming into chat. Very good. No questions. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. I appreciate you all coming along. And until next month, have a fabulous time. If you do have a question, feel free. You can raise your hand. You can come off mute and say hi if you want to. Always willing to say hi. I thought that I moved the camera. I forgot to move the camera up there. I'm looking down. I'm looking down here. Chins up, sweetie. Chins up. Thank you all. Now, the pizza is arriving at 5:30. There's.
I'm going to another.
Going to another group. Where's Adrian? Hi, you got your hand up. Come off mute. Or are you trying to do are you doing a clap? If you've got a question, feel free to come off mute.
Hey, Kirsty.
Hi, Emma. How are you, sweetie?
I'm good. That's so much work putting that together. Well done. That's
Thank
huge.
you. Thank
It's
you.
huge.
It's always a big month. It's a little less than when I was doing all of the what's new to 365, but it's still a lot of work. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's just intense.
I know, and for everyone listening as well, I know it's intense, but I'm trying to make sure that I'm not going for too long either. And getting people and helping and supporting them is the aim of the game, right? I'm just going to put it up onto the screen so everyone can say, hi, I get it to the right. That's the problem, isn't it, when you're trying to do it on another screen? I can't grab it now. Yes, that's it, just on the table here. Thank you very much. There we go. We got pizzas in the room. I hope you're all well.
No, I'm not getting any pizza. That sucks.
I know. Well, you're in the wrong room, aren't you?
I am. I totally am. I think Adrian got a question.
I think he just said it's technical issues. So
Oh.
he can't get the hand down, doesn't want to come down. But I do like, if I did that standing in the room, I could say I've got technical issues.
Okay.
But anyway, I'll let everyone go. So thank
Okay.
you all.
Enjoy pizza.
Indeed. Bye all.
Bye.